Hey there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Uncovering Your Inner Power. Today's episode is one that I think many people will deeply resonate with because we're talking about something that every human being will encounter at some point in life, and that is grief. My guest today is Lynn Banis, a psychologist and coach whose life changed dramatically within a very short period of time. Within just 3 years, Lynn experienced devastating loss of her mother, her little brother, and her husband. As you can imagine, that kind of grief can shake the very foundation of a person's life. Despite years of education and experience helping others navigate difficult emotions, Lynn found herself facing the same disorientation that so many people feel when loss arrives: the fog, the loneliness, the questioning of purpose. But through that journey, Lynn began doing something remarkable. She turned her own tools inward. She examined the beliefs, the patterns, and the mindset that were keeping her stuck, and slowly began rebuilding a new life, one grounded on purpose. And today she dedicates her work to helping widows rediscover meaning, joy, and fulfillment after loss. Her story is not about erasing grief or pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about learning how to carry that grief while still creating a life worth living. Lynn, thank you so much for being here today. I am really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jill. I'm looking forward to it too. And can I make just one quick change in that intro? Is that I have expanded now beyond just widows, and I am working with women who have suffered any kind of significant loss, whether it's a job, a friend, a pet, whatever. It hits our identity. And that's where we really need to work, is help people figuring out again, well, who am I now that that's not in my life?
Oh, I'm so grateful to hear that because it's so true because we suffer so many types of loss and grief over things. It could be loss of a job, loss of a relationship, loss of a person, a pet, anything. So I definitely think that that is an amazing path forward for you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I hope it impacts everybody, because truly we are all grieving right this minute. We are grieving the loss of our life before COVID. We're grieving about what's happening internationally and nationally. And we call it stress, but we really are grieving because we've lost a part of who we are and how we functioned.
That is such a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Within just 3 years, you lost your mother, your little brother, your husband. That's unimaginable amount of loss in such a short time. When my daughter Jenna and her father passed on, I remember feeling like someone had burned a hole in my heart. The pain was so physical, it almost felt unsurvivable.
Yeah.
What was your first phase of grief like emotionally and physically?
Well, it's numb at first. You just numb, and you can't believe it. And of course, you had the compounded grief of more than one person, and I did too. And that just, it hit so deeply. And my loss were people that were extremely important to me, and I'm sure your loss was too. I honestly, personally can't imagine losing a child. That just has to be terrible. So, my heart goes out to you and your family. I think that early on, I just tried to keep going, and I didn't. I have two daughters here, but they both work. And so, they had to go back to work. They couldn't sit around with mom. And so I had neighbors that I could rely on. And so I just kind of put my head down and I got the things done that have to be done right away. And so many women don't know about some of those things. They don't know that if you have a joint bank account, they close it immediately as soon as they find out that your spouse has passed. You can't get your money. And that's pretty scary. So then you have to talk to the bank and get it worked out, which they do, but still it's a pain in the neck, and it's unexpected, and it's a burden, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of women go through their marriages relying on the husband to do a lot of the financial stuff, and they don't involve themselves with it. So when it's time that that happens, they're taken aback because they're thrown into a whole new world that they're inexperienced with.
Right, right. And the same goes for, the husband's computer is full of stuff. Well, if you don't know his his passcodes, you're in trouble. And my sister-in-law had that happen, and it took them 3 or 4 weeks, and her son is a computer guru, but it was just so difficult to get in because he had layers and layers and layers of protection because of his business.
Yeah.
That was hard.
Well, not only are you dealing with the grief of the loss of your loved one, but now you're dealing with the stress of trying to work out the things that you need to move forward.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and as far as emotions in the early stages, I mean, I cried all the time, of course, and but I think there was also a part of me that was quite numb. The sadness, that emotional part. I agree with you. I One day I thought, this, I can feel the pain in my bones. I can't believe it. This is just nobody ever talks about that, but I felt that, and you said you did too, and some of my clients have, and it's just so deep, so penetrating.
It did feel like a literal burning, like it felt like a circular burning right here in the middle of my heart, and I can only liken it to a blowtorch.
Yeah,
Because it was
yeah,
just that intense, and everyone feels it differently, everybody's fog is
yeah,
different, but I think the most important concept to introduce to our listeners is that whatever you're feeling is normal.
yep, yep, and it's yours, and you can't expect somebody else to know what it is, what it's like. And so that brings me to a we can go a couple of ways. One is continuing with what I did, and the other is just I'll keep it really short. I feel that part of my responsibility and those grieving is to educate others. It's really hard to do while you're grieving, but people just don't know how to respond, and so they don't. And then that hurts terribly. And all of a sudden you don't have friends. But I think what's going on there is that nobody's taught us in our society. There's a taboo around talking about grief and depression and all those things. So, you know, I've got, and I will send it to you. I've got a download that is, how to tell your friends and family about grief, which some people could really, I'm sure, would help them, because you don't have to sit in silence and or get angry because of what people say. If you will take the responsibility of saying, that didn't help, or I really don't know what I need right now, but it's just important for me to know that you care. You picked up the phone. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I look forward to you doing that, continuing to do that on occasion. Um, because we step into something, we don't know what to say, and we tend to say things we've heard, and many of them are just really hurtful, and we don't mean that. We just
Yeah,
don't know.
I tried to I tried to accept that during my grieving period that people a lot of times said things that it just kind of set me back, but I tried to think, okay, they're coming from their space and they don't get me right now. So I tried to overlook a lot of that
Yeah,
and just say they're doing their best. And but one thing you mentioned that I'd like people to really gravitate towards was community. You said you did a lot within your community. I think it's very important for people to reach outwards when you're going through grief. Tell people you need help. There are so many support groups available for people who are grieving, and I think it's paramount to have that kind of support to help you work through it. And another concept is you don't ever get over it, you get through it. There's such a difference.
Yes, and I think that what you need to understand is no, it doesn't ever go away, but you learn to carry it differently.
Yes.
And it's not so in your face, hurtful all the time.
Right.
And if we can help you move that into an appreciation for what you had in life and what you experienced, and just count that as part of your life. Don't try to push it away, it's there. Um, but, we have to accept the fact that something's not there anymore.
Yes. One thing that really was a challenge for me in the beginning because I have 3 children. And when I go out into networking situations and place because I'm a realtor, so I have to keep building business and go out and grow your network. And one of the top questions people always ask is, how many children do you have?
Oh, yeah.
That was the hardest question for me to learn how to navigate after she passed because I still have 3 children. One of them is just not physical.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I didn't know how to articulate that. So now, when people ask me, I say I have 3 children. My oldest is X age, my middle is this age, and my youngest turned into an angel at 19.
That's beautiful.
That works for me. And I think the fact that I have a strong belief in the afterlife is another factor in working through grief. I think that from my perspective, I think it would be a lot harder to work through grief if you didn't feel that life goes on afterwards.
Yeah, I think there needs to be something larger than you that you believe in. I'm not going to dictate you have to believe in this, that, or the other thing
Oh,
because
correct.
it's all personal. But to know that there is something more, something to live for, something to connect with is huge.
Absolutely. You spent so many years helping others through their struggles as a psychologist and coach. I imagine that it must have been a strange shift when you suddenly became the one who needed support yourself.
Oh boy. Yes, absolutely. Um, and I always was, I've really worked on this, was one that was the go-to person, was the answer person, never the asking person. So I had to really learn that. And it's hard, it's slow, it's easier just to disappear, stay in your house, whatever. I must say, I'm just so thankful I have my dogs because there were days I probably wouldn't have gotten out of bed if I didn't have the responsibility of them. And, you know, um, so I think that finding something other than yourself, because, I don't want to say it's a pity party. Some people say that. No, it's not. You have to go through it. But if you have something that will distract you, something like a pet, um, or best friend, that helps because we just can't stay in that heavy grieving 24/7.
Yeah, definitely. I have 3 cats and I really resonate with that. I don't know where I'd be without my cats. They give love unconditionally.
Exactly.
So, and we all need a place to put our love. And especially when you live alone. Like, do you live alone? I do.
Yeah,
Um, so when you live alone, it's really important to have somewhere to offer out your love.
it is. It is because your love hasn't gone anywhere.
Exactly.
You still have that. You still have that to give. And frankly, I believe you still have the love of the person you lost,
Mm-hmm.
because
Oh, for sure.
that doesn't disappear. That's there. That's part of your life. And so feeling like you've totally lost it is something you need to, come to grips with. And it's not quick. It takes time. But I think it's so helpful when you can get there.
I agree. After Jenna passed on, there were long stretches where I had very little energy or desire to do anything. And I think many people judge themselves for that. Why is that lack of motivation actually a natural part of the grieving process?
Because our brain does some very interesting things when we get into that heavy grief. Much of it is fight or flight or fawn, and most of us kind of try to disappear because it hurts so much. We have no motivation. Just to get off the couch is monumental sometimes. So, your brain is. Let's see. You know where all your furniture is, right, in your house, and the reason you can navigate that at night, probably, with very low light or no light, without crashing into everything, is because your brain has made a map of where everything is. Okay, so now it's changed, and your poor brain is trying to say, what the heck happened? What what needs to go there to make this picture work again? That doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while, and the energy that sadness and grief takes from you is tremendous. You don't realize it. But everything in your body just kind of slows down. So and you've got that fog, brain fog, or widow fog, or whatever people want to call it, where your brain just is not functioning.
Mm.
So it's not functioning in the regular way. There's this kind of curtain that comes in and separates you from reality in a way.
Yeah.
And so things are happening all around you, different things are happening in you, and that's very hard to bring together and make sense out of
Now,
it.
you talk about the energy within you, and I think personally, for me, I don't think I've ever come back to the level of energy that I had previously. Not in a bad way. I mean that things that used to make me spiral out of control no longer do because my energy is more subtle. I feel like I've grown through my grief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, our energy, we were willing to put it on certain things that now, at least for me, feel like they're not all that significant. Why am I
Yes.
spending energy on this? In the greater scheme of things, what difference is it going to make?
Right.
And you're not willing to do that often before you have this kind of an experience. You got to take care of everything, got to fix everything, got to, so
I think
that
it's a
is,
shame that we have to go through something so tremendously painful to recognize that there are some things in life that just aren't worth spiraling over.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I often would ask my clients, when I was working before, it was mostly leadership stuff and communication and how people show up. And I'd sometimes say, are you willing to use your energy for that? Let's say you have 100 points of energy and this thing's taken 60. Are you willing to give up that much energy?
Right.
So I think the death takes up about 90, if not more.
I would agree with that. At some point, the process, many people begin shifting from surviving grief to rebuilding their lives. For you personally, when did you first notice that shift starting to happen?
Well, I did what I would not tell my clients to do, and that is, first of all, I got really, really busy, and tried to keep myself, moving, 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 moving. And I took a look at my house, which was large, had a big yard, swimming pool, and I just thought, I cannot manage this by myself. So I sold my house and purchased a smaller one, and it's worked for me, but I keep thinking, what if you make that decision and you end up hating where you are? It's not a time when you can make clear decisions. But anyway, I did it. And after about 9 months, my body said, knock it off, no more. And I was sick for 3 months with one thing after another. So that was the time when I started to think, okay, now what is really happening? What can you do to deal with this? Because it was clear to me that I couldn't just put it on a back burner and keep going. So I began then to start using all of the tools and things that I had gained over the years, the tools, the experience, the knowledge. And one morning I woke up and I thought, dang, I have everything I need to help other people. What am I doing sitting here? So then I started putting together some programming and trying to figure out what would be the best thing. And I personally do not deal with the early stages of grief when people are in such emotional turmoil. I start working with people when they're beginning to, the brain fog is lifting, they're beginning to make rational decisions. They feel like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be where I am anymore. Not I don't want to be on earth. I just don't want to be in this situation. There's got to be something else. And that's when I start working with people, and we just do a lot of deep work around beliefs and values and self-limiting beliefs and all of that kind of stuff. So that, and just unpeel all the layers of garbage that we've taken on in life that probably isn't ours, and
Right.
and then replacing that with things that are supportive and helpful. And once we've done that, then we can start really looking at, who are you really? And I do a study of them when they're in flow, so I can, we have the data on what they do, how they do it, and what environment supports them, so that they can then start creating a vision for how they really want to live, what their life really wants to be. And then they make a blueprint, step by step, how do we do this? And then they get in a group of women doing the same sort of thing, who support each other for a year. So we know that they have made a full transition into that life that they really want to live. I mean, that's not the end of it, but it is an amazing difference from what most grief people are doing. You don't just finish with feeling emotionally better.
No, that's something that you'll carry for the rest of your life, I believe. And it's how you carry it is what is important. And for me, I feel that making meaning out of your trauma by helping others who are going through what you went through makes it at least worth something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before Jenna and her dad passed, I had started to write my book because I had become sober, and I was sober, I don't know how many years I was sober when I started writing the book. So the premise of starting to write the book was to help people overcome the victim mentality of life. And my victim mentality drove me to excessive alcohol use. And so I had worked through that, but then when they passed, I was thrown back into
Yeah.
a space where I couldn't function. But I was so thankful to be sober in that space because I could think at least clearly, right? So once I started to come out of that grief transition and move forward a little bit, I realized that grief had to become a part of the book. And in all of this, I've grown spiritually and made that all part of the book too. So I think when you can take all of what you've experienced and package it into something, like it's like a gift to someone else.
Mhm. Yeah, and just think about the concept of giving. Every time you give something to someone, if you're giving it out of just wanting to give, not expecting anything in return, you get this wonderful sense of, wow, that feels good. Well, darn, we need to be able to accept that. And that's why I don't do a lot of one-on-one work. I keep people in small private groups because we need that feeling of helping somebody else. And if we're focusing on, okay, here's where I am, now how do I move forward? Instead of, here's where I am, oh, poor me, I can't handle this. And somebody else says, well, I have one worse. And, you don't want to go there. You want to go forward. And so in a small group, we find that you heal better together.
Yeah, I definitely think grief is an area of life where you want to be in a group support. Now, can you talk about the ways that you help people through other types of grief?
Well, I think that so much of it hinges on your sense of identity. Who am I? If you've lost that, then you're kind of all in the same type of issues. Um, who am I without my dog that I spend all this time with and that, I have responsibility for and I make their food and, okay, so how do we handle that? It's not just go buy another puppy.
Right,
It's okay, so let's talk about your thoughts about this and your beliefs about this and getting those cleaned up. um you might be, well, I lost my dog, so I must be a terrible dog mother. Okay, so does that make sense? And and where is the proof of this? So you've got those kinds of things, and then you have the replacement of, what do I do now? And what is really truly important to me? There may be things besides, beyond having a dog. It may be just caring for people. It may be giving of your time. There's all sorts of things there. And we kind of get stuck with, I lost my dog. I lost my dog. I lost my dog.
right.
So
So, do you see many people finding comfort in continued connection with their loved ones as believing that they're
absolutely, absolutely. And I would just encourage people to talk to them. I often on my phone, a picture of my husband will pop up and unexpectedly, and I'll just go, hi, Bill, how are you doing? And,
uh-huh.
and so
Yeah,
it's, instead of making myself feel bad, I let go of the negative and just, hey, how are you? I miss you. It's
yeah,
okay to say those kinds of things.
sure. I talk to Jenna all the time. And, quite honestly, a short time after she had passed, I was having a really hard time. And I just sat on the end of my bed one morning and I looked up and I said, Jenna, Mama's having a really hard time today. You're gonna have to send me some signs that you're okay. And at the time, I was drinking bulletproof coffee. I don't know if you've heard of it, but you put butter in the coffee, and it's supposed to do something with your fatty acids or whatever. So I went down in the morning. I'm making my coffee, and I put my butter in there. And when I go to take it off the coffee maker, there's a heart shape in my coffee. Like it is absolutely, there's no mistaking it. It's a heart
Hmm.
shape with a ring around it in a heart shape. And I'm like, All right, we're good, we're good. And it just and then throughout the next couple of days, I she sent me, like, numerous signs. I'm like, "Oh my," and I took pictures of all of them because for me, it was just validation that she is not gone, she's just non-physical.
That's right. That's right. I have kind of a funny one. All these crows showed up, and I thought, what the crows? And then my one of my daughters said, yeah. And I said, you know what? That's Bill. That is Bill. He thinks that's funny because he knows how smart crows are, and we've often
That's
talked
right.
about it.
They're very
And so
intelligent.
he would send me a crow. That is his sense of humor.
I love that. I love that. For someone listening right now who may feel like they're stuck in grief and can't imagine ever feeling joy again, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that absolutely every experience they've had in their life, everything they've gone through, everything they've conquered, everything they've failed at and then tried again and gotten successful has given them the strength and the ability to deal with what they're going through right now. The difficult part for us as humans is we can't always tap into that. So you need to find somebody that knows how to help you because it is there. You are more than your situation.
I love that. Lynn, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us today. Conversations like this are so important because grief is something we all experience, yet so many people feel like they have to walk through it alone. What I really appreciate about your message is that you're not asking people to erase their grief or rush through it. You're helping them understand that even devastating loss, it is still possible to build a life with purpose, connection, and meaning.
Right.
For anyone listening who resonated with Lynn's story and would like to learn more about her work helping widows and others rebuild their lives, I'll include her links in the show notes so you can connect with her. And as always, if today's conversation spoke to you, please consider sharing this episode with someone who might need to hear it. Until next time, remember, even the most painful chapters of our lives can become the foundation for our greatest growth. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next episode of Uncovering Your Inner Power. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I truly honor you for being here and for choosing to do this deeper work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to stay connected. You can sign up for my newsletter at empoweredbythestorm.com/newsletter. And when you do, you'll receive a free copy of my How to Love Yourself workbook as a thank you. My book, Empowered by the Storm, is also available on Amazon if you'd like to go deeper into this work on your own time. And if you're feeling called to more personal support, you can visit my website to explore private coaching and see if it feels like the right next step for you. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, trust your journey, and remember, your healing matters.